Okay, I think we're live. Hello everyone. こんばんは、皆さん。配信がスタートしました。こんばんは。見えていますか？音も大丈夫ですか？右側かなにチャットがあって、もしよかったらぜひ、聞こえますとか、チャットに書いてください。If you can hear us, maybe you can comment in the chat on the right side and tell us that everything is okay. Let me just check the comments. Okay, looks like the chat is running, so that's good. Okay, それでは第24回カフェトーク英語シンポジウムプライドマンス2023クイアメディア、ポップカルチャーメディアを通して、多様なジェンダーとセクシュアリティについて学ぼうを開始したいと思います。本日司会を担当しますカフェトークスタッフのマレンと申します。My name is Madeline, and I'm staff at Cafetalk, and I will be hosting this 24th English symposium titled Queer Media, Let's Learn About the Diversity of Gender and Sexuality Through Pop Culture Media. 本日は3人の講師が参加していただきます。テーマはこちらにあります。Today, we are joined by 3 tutors who will talk about the following topics. まずはジェム先生が、フィールグッドという、コメディドラマ、について話してくれます。その後、メインク講師が、書説、そうですね、青春小説、YA 向け青春小説について話してくれます。で、最後に、ローレン先生が、現代クィア文学における革新的な変化 Changing the Game in Contemporary Queer Literature という英語のタイトルなんですけど、そのテーマについて話してくれます。Just going back a little bit because I didn't add the English title for Jem and for Maynk. So for Jem, the title is Feel Good, which is a British semi-autobiographical comedy drama that they will be telling us about. And for Maynk, it's about the coming-of-age YA novel, Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. So looking forward to all of these topics. もし、講師へのご質問やコメントがあれば、英語でも日本語でも大丈夫ですので、お気軽に、右側にある、チャットボックスからご送信お願いします。今日の配信は後でも無料でもう一度見れますので、途中に参加される方、もう一度見たい方は、ぜひ数日後にもう一度キャンペーンページで、アーカイブをご覧ください。そしてですね、ライブ配信中にコメントを書き込んでくださっている方の中から抽選で500ポイントをプレゼントします。コメント投稿をお待ちしております。If you have any questions for the tutors or comments on their presentations, please feel free to write in the chat on the right side during the stream, and we'll talk about your questions after each presentation. The live stream itself will also be available as a recording for free later. So if you want to watch it again, or if you maybe joined later, then you can watch it again in a few days. Just check out the campaign page again. And finally, out of all the participants who comment today, we will be giving out 500 points randomly. So please comment and maybe you will win something. So, そうですね、講師が、本やテレビシリーズを紹介してくれる前に、今回は講師たちと、私の名前のところに表示されている代名詞、きっと皆さん気づいたと思いますが、それについてちょっと、説明したいと思います。So before we get started with the tutors' presentations, I'd like to talk a little bit about the pronouns that you can see next to our names and titles here today, and what they mean, why they are there. So yes, thank you. Let me just switch to my other view here as well. So pronouns in English, what are pronouns? How are they used? ちょっと、バイリンガルで作ってみたんですが、ちょっと早く移動するかもしれないんですけど、こちらの資料は、シンポジウムページでもダウンロードできますので、もし もう一度見たければぜひダウンロードしてください。I'll click through this quite quickly, but you can also download this PDF in English and in Japanese on the symposium page itself. So pronouns, what are pronouns? So basically they are words that are used to substitute, which means replace, a noun or a noun phrase. So for example, the ones you can see here on the right, I, she, he, you, it, we, they. そうですね。英語の代名詞は、名詞や名詞句を、代用する、あるいは置き換えるために使われている言葉です。皆さんきっとご存知だと思いますが、右側に出てる I, she, he, you, it, we, they は英語の代名詞です。So, what are your pronouns? Is a question that is recently more commonly used by native speakers when meeting a new person. あなたの代名詞は最近英語ネイティブの方が、会話で初めて誰かと会うときに、よく使っている質問なので、それについてちょっと話したいと思います。So, when introducing yourself, you might say, or someone might say, hello, my name is so-and-so, and I use these pronouns. So, for example, here are some things someone might say. I use he, him pronouns, or my pronouns are she, her, and they, them. Some people might not use pronouns, so they might say, I don't use pronouns, please call me by my name instead. Some people might be okay with any pronouns. 左側、に出てるちょっと例文がいくつかありますけど、こういう言い方を使ってこの代名詞を使ってますとか、代名詞特に何でもいいですよとか、いろんな言い方があります。So, let's maybe try this out ourselves. Do a quick self-introduction. I'll go first. So, hello everyone. My name is Madeline. I'm staff at Cafetalk, and my pronouns are she, her. So, I'm not sure if the students see the same order as we see here, but I see myself at the top, and then Maynk, and then Jem, and then Lauren. So let's just go in this order. So, Maynk, do you want to go next? Oh, I hope everyone is unmuted. I'm not sure. We can't hear you, Maynk. Not sure. Let's. Oh yes, now
sorry,
we can.
there was some mic.
No problem.
So, my name is Maynk, and my pronouns are basically he and him, but I sometimes use they and them depending on the scenarios that I'm in, and sometimes I like to prefer they and them as they reflect more about me and what I see myself as people see myself and how I see myself. I am a new teacher on Cafetalk, and I recently joined about 12 months ago. And for the time being, I'm enjoying my time as a tutor in Cafetalk, and I've been getting a lot of love. So I'm looking forward to present my topic today, that is Aristotle and Dante discovers the creative universe, coming-of-age novel that I'm going to present to all of you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Jem, do you want to go next?
Sure. So, my name's Jem. I'm an English tutor from the UK. My main pronouns are she, her, but I also don't mind they, them. That's okay too. That's it, basically.
Thank you. And Lauren?
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Lauren. I am, of course, another English tutor on Cafetalk. My gender identity is very complex, and really I go by different pronouns with different groups of people, but for simplicity's sake, I introduce myself as going by they, them pronouns.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all very much. Okay, so people might wonder, okay, so this is what it's like when someone introduces themselves. How do I use this when I actually talk about other people? 他人についてじゃあ話すときはどう使いますかこの、代名詞。特に今回も3人も出てきた、この they という代名詞はどういう使い方になりますか So, here are just some examples for different pronouns in use. she と he と they のちょっと例文を作ってみたんですが、シンプルに She likes to drink her coffee black. He likes to drink his coffee with lots of milk. They like to drink their coffee with sugar and milk. なので、こういう使い方なんですが、So the last one, they, is probably the one you might be least familiar with from your regular English studies in middle school and in high school. 多分中学校とか高校で学んだ英語で、この3つの例文の中でちょっとわからなかったかもしれないのがこの一人について話す時の they なんですが、基本的に they という言葉はこういう3つの使い方があります。So let's move here. Yeah, so basically, first of all, we have the version where they refers to people in a general way or a group of people who are not specified. 複数人を、指す、使い方の they がまず、なんですが、例文としては people can do what they want. So it's a group of people. People can do what they want. 2つ目の使い方は性別がわからない人の話をする場合なんですが The second one is if you talk about someone where they're unknown or they're unspecified, you don't know their gender. So for example, if someone lost their wallet at a cafe, and then you would say someone lost their wallet at the cafe today. そうですね、その財布をなくした場合の、誰が財布をなくしたかがわからないので、they lost their wallet を言います。で、最後は、今回出てきた、使い方なんですが、so the last one is, for example, in the example sentence, that's my friend Joe, they love hiking. この使い方は、性自認がノンバイナリー、つまり男性でも女性でもない、方が使う、they という、代名詞ですね。Okay, so we've learned that, but it's new and maybe it's a bit confusing, so I'll try my best, but what if I make a mistake? Isn't that maybe, I don't know, am I making a mistake? Will it be rude? I think that's something that a lot of people might think when they're introduced to something new. そうですね、ちょっと難しいかも間違えたらどうしようと考えるかもしれないんですが、やはり大事なのは完璧な人なんていません。間違えたときは、訂正しましょう。ということなので、会話の中ではもしかしてこういう流れがあるかもしれないんですが、So when you talk to someone and you might not know that they use a certain pronoun, you might have a conversation like this. So you might say, Tim said he would cook for us today. That's so nice. And then your friend might say, oh, I think Tim uses they, them pronouns. And then you might respond saying, oh, thanks. I wonder what they will make. I hear they are a really good cook. なので、言われたら、訂正して、修正して、で、そのまま続けばいいと思います。So, if someone tells you, oh, that person uses different pronouns, just change how you say it. Say, oh, thank you for telling me, and move on. That's okay. No one's perfect. So, let's move on. And you might also think, but people can guess my pronouns by looking at me, the way I dress, the way I style my hair. Why is it important to specify them? そうですね。日本語だとここ、見ればわかるのになんで言わないといけないのと思うかもしれないんですが、やはり男性、女性、ノンバイナリー、特有の外見があるわけではありません。So, there's no specific look for every man, every woman, or every non-binary person. Someone might dress a certain way or wear their hair in a certain way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will use a certain pronoun for sure. So, yeah, ここにも日本語でも書いたんですが、ちょっと英語で言います。While people might dress in a certain way that is common for people of their gender, not everyone does. So, by stating our pronouns, regardless of if we are transgender, cisgender, non-binary, or intersex, and/or intersex, we can normalize not making presumptions about other people and approach everyone with an open mind. 見た目で判断したり、思い込みで他人を決めつけないことを習慣化し、で、誰に対しても、寛容すいません。寛容な、態度で、接することができるようになります。So, finally, let's maybe just take another look at what these pronouns look like next to each other in use in different ways. So, you have she's brave, he is kind, they are friendly, her earphones, his pen, their t-shirt. I love her, I love him, I love them, herself, himself, themselves. So you can see the they on the right side is used in the same way that you would use plural they. So you don't have to learn anything new there. It's not they is, it's still they are. 皆さんが学校とかで学んだ they と全く同じ使い方ですね。一人の話をするときでも is は使わずに、are を使います。そして最後のこの themselves は、これも見るし、あと themselves F で終わる書き方も、たまに見るんですけど、そうですね、それ後で私も英語のネイティブではないので、後で先生たちにもちょっと聞いてみたいんですが、私は両方見たんですが、もしかしてルールもあるかもしれないですね。So for themselves, you might sometimes also see themselves with an F. I don't know if both is okay or if there's more of a tendency with native speakers of which to use. I found both, so maybe they can tell me later. So yeah, the final thing I think is just language evolves as culture changes. 文化の変化に伴い言語も変化しますということなので、だんだん、多様な文化になりつつ、言語がどう変わるかは本当に楽しみにできることだと思いますので、これからも、そうですね、言葉がどう変わるかは、とてもいいことだと思います。楽しみにしてます。So, yeah, that's my presentation. So maybe we can just quickly go back to that one question because I saw Lauren nodding. So maybe you have something you can tell me about the themselves thing.
Yeah, it's a little all over the place in terms of like the discourse about which one is better to use, because the they them in this case would be one person.
Yeah.
You see themselves, or I see people kind of being a proponent for, because this is a singular person, use themselves instead of themselves. But in practice, we're used to saying themselves. So kind of changing that is a little difficult. So I hear both, I say both, just kind of whichever kind of works in the moment. But currently they're both acceptable, I would say.
Okay, yeah. And I mean, like we said, language changes. So maybe in like 10 years, it will look different and we might have settled on one version or just keep both.
Mhm.
So that's exciting to see. Okay. Yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to maybe add on to what I talked about? If not, we can then move on to Jem's presentation.
Hi everyone, so once again, my name is Jem, I'm from the UK, and today I'll be talking about one of my favourite dramas, which is called Feel Good. First of all, what is Feel Good? It's a romantic comedy drama based on Mae Martin's life story. It's about half true story and half fiction, so we call that semi-autobiographic. This drama was written by Mae Martin and Joe Hampson. It's 12 episodes. They were released in 2020 and 2021, so it's quite a short series. It was released internationally by Netflix, and the age rating in the UK is 15 plus because there are some scenes that may not be suitable for younger children. If you want to show a drama to younger children, I recommend something like Heartstopper instead. That would be great. So, this drama is about Mae Martin's life story, but who is Mae Martin? Mae Martin is a non-binary bisexual comedian. So, Mae Martin uses they, them pronouns. They were born in Canada, but they are now based in the UK. And Mae regularly appears on mainstream British TV shows. So these are TV shows on the main channels. These are things like quiz shows, comedy shows. My favourite appearance was Mae Martin in Taskmaster, which is a really funny British game show. You can find it on YouTube if you're interested. Mae speaks openly about a history of overcoming drug addiction. So Mae had a drug problem as a teenager. Now, with the topic of drug addiction, people tend to sweep it under the carpet. Now, that idiom means that they ignore the problem, they don't talk about it. So I think Mae is pretty brave for talking about things like that. So what's the story of Feel Good? The real Mae Martin plays a fictional version of themselves. So it's Mae Martin as Mae Martin. Mae's fictional girlfriend, Georgina Lawson, nicknamed George, is played by a British actress called Charlotte Ritchie. Now, Mae has a Canadian accent and Charlotte has a British accent, so the contrast is pretty interesting if you like accents. The love story starts when Mae and George meet at Mae's comedy club in Manchester. Mae has trouble with a drug addiction, and George has trouble coming out to friends and family. So they help each other. For example, George encourages Mae to go to a support group, and Mae helps George because George has only had straight relationships with men previously, so it's a bit of a new experience for George. Mae and George try to overcome these problems, learn to communicate, and they try to have a healthy romantic relationship by the end of the story. So, let's check a quote. This is something that Mae says to George. Mae says, "I've been with good people, really good people, people who love me, and I lie next to them and I just feel so restless. And then when I lie next to you, I feel still and quiet and deep inside." So that's a pretty romantic quote there. Now, it also covers Mae's gender identity in Feel Good. At the beginning of the drama, Mae identifies as female, which is the identity Mae was given at birth, meaning when Mae was a baby, the doctors and Mae's parents decided you are female, but that might not be how Mae really felt. Mae begins to question their identity during the story. For example, we see May start to wear more masculine clothes. In the end, May moves towards a non-binary identity, which is neither male nor female. And we have a quote, which is something May says in Feel Good. May says, "I don't actually really identify as a woman these days, just so you know." Now, I often think about ways that we could help people like May. So, for example, changing the uniforms at work or at school so that more people will feel comfortable wearing them. If you've heard of anything like that, let us know in the comments. Go ahead. Why do I love Feel Good? First of all, May's a comedian. It was written by a comedian, so it's really funny. It includes real issues that affect this community, like questioning your gender identity and coming out to friends and family. Also, it's a relatable story because May and George overcome their own personal problems. I think that's something everyone can experience, trying to overcome your problems, trying to communicate with someone you love, like your family, friends, or partner. Sometimes you have miscommunications. That's exactly the kind of things that May and George experience. Finally, Feel Good has a happy ending. Now, in a lot of older LGBTQI+ media, we find that those characters often don't get their happy ending. They often get a sad ending. But in recent media, we see more and more of those characters getting their happily ever after. So if you watch Feel Good, you can enjoy a love story with a heartwarming, romantic, happy ending. Finally, thank you for listening. If you like, please check out May Martin or Feel Good. And if you want to discuss anything related to these issues in English, my lessons will always be a safe space for you. Thank you very much and happy Pride Month, everyone.
No, I was muted. Thank you very much. Okay, wonderful. Let's see what we have in the comments. Yep, there's one comment. Is the show very funny if they are a comedian, or is it more serious? Because the quote you had was a very romantic but also serious quote. So how would you say, is it a show where you laugh out loud, or?
There are times when you laugh out loud. The show manages to handle serious issues in a sensitive way, to a point where it never gets too dark. And if it gets too dark, the mood always lightens again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got serious issues, but they're handled in a sensitive way, and there's a lot of comedy as well. So it's not a dark show.
That's nice. And like you said, it has a happy ending, so we can watch it while knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and it's nice.
You can relax. Sometimes I get a bit worried when I start watching a drama, like, oh no, I like these characters too much. I can't handle a sad ending.
Yeah, no, I agree. When you mentioned the uniforms, one thing I thought about that I heard about in recent years about Japan is that school uniforms are standard here, and in some cities, I'm not sure if it's like private schools or what it is, but some schools have started to allow students to choose the uniform they want to wear regardless of their gender, because I think for most years since these uniforms existed, people were just told if you're a girl you wear a skirt, and if you're a boy you wear pants. So I think there's been some push towards letting children choose what they want to wear, so that's really nice. As well as I've heard about some activism about when people search for a job in Japan, that also has quite strict fashion rules about what kind of the business look is, and there's also been pushed towards having that being less strict, but of course it also depends on the company you're trying to get in, what you can wear there. Sorry, I have. Sorry, had an alarm go off. Okay, and someone asked, can we watch it on Netflix in Japan? Hopefully, probably.
I think so. So
if it's an original, probably.
yes, so I was living in Japan at the time when I watched it. So as long as it's still there, it was a couple of years ago, but as long as it's still there, you can watch it.
And then it should probably have subtitles as well, so that makes it easier to watch too. Though personally, I recommend watching things with your target language subtitles rather than your native language, because that's better for studying. But so would you say that in recent years there are more shows on TV in the UK with non-binary characters or generally LGBTQ+ characters?
Absolutely. And not just dramas and things like that, but for example, if there's a quiz show or a game show, a few of the contestants might identify as something like queer or non-binary or something like that. We're seeing it more and more these days.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. So would some shows also, would people say their pronouns, or is that not so common yet?
What you notice is the host will use the correct pronouns for the contestant. So the host will say, "Oh, so they did really well in the last round." We see more and more of that, so it's really good.
Okay, yeah, that's nice. Yeah. So it's just kind of normal in the conversation flow.
They're trying to make it that way, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Okay, let me check if we got any other questions. 今のところ他に質問はないですが、もし後で何か思いついたらぜひチャットに書いてください。最後にもう一度ジェム先生にも聞けますので、feel free to write your questions later as well if you remember something. I can ask again at the end too. Okay, then next up would be Maynk.
So, our topic is the coming of age YA fiction by Benjamin Elliott Science, and the name of the book is Aristotle and Dante Discover Secrets of the Universe. So, coming to the first slide. So, in this book, there are two boys, as cliche it should be, and they have personalities, and they develop a friendship as they grow in their journey and as they move forward in this book. And these two boys are from El Paso, Texas. So El Paso is a place in America, and these two boys are fairly young. They are around 15 years old. They are facing the struggles of adolescence. Aristotle is the name of one of the boys, Ari, as they commonly call them a family, and in this book. So Ari is from a family that is riddled with sensitive and complicated issues. He's a tough guy, but beneath his all no care attitude and hardened shell, there are his thoughts and his curiosities that he hides from the world. But later in this book, as we move on, we go through his entire spectrum, and at the other end of the spectrum is Dante. Dante is a free spirit. He's a completely different person from Aristotle, and he comes from a very different background, as you would see in the book. And in this presentation, I do not want to give any spoilers because this is such a good book, and I think everyone should read it. just going to skim through some of the main points that I would suggest everyone should know without getting much into the story. So, as cliche it should be, these two teenagers would connect over their intriguing names, Aristotle and Dante. And as you both know, these are the names of philosophers who are very famous throughout the world, across the globe. The story of these two Latino boys redefines the concept of gender, and it is set in a very simple setting, like anyone can imagine the situations these two are. And this setting is simple, but you can say it's not ordinary. It has a very rich background, and the characters and the incidents, the nature around them is very, very different from you assume in a common, typical high school boy stories. And forward, they explore their sexuality and move further in their identity and or gender. So next we are going to talk about symbolization in this story. So this story has a lot of symbolic meanings. And first we have to talk about the symbolization of significant events. Unfortunately, in all the LGBTQ plus tales that we have, there are some hate crimes, and some of them are very brutal, and some of them are not very tolerable to general public. People just want to stay away from that. So this story also has some hate crimes, one major in particular, but that is not how this story works. Everyone in this story is not circulating around that hate crime. And apart from the symbolization of events, we have a lot of small incidents that are later proven to be a very significant events. And these events have very major impacts on both the character arcs. Next, we move to the symbolization of transition. So, the is set in 80s, specifically 1987. And both two boys are from Mexican descent. And it's important to note that even in the early 90s or 80s, there were quite a few movements regarding queer culture. And although it all started in America, we can clearly see that the impact and the scale of which is very universal. Even at one point of time, Aristotle takes a jab in the story by stating the fact that kissing the same gender or kissing boys is not actually an American movement. It is started somewhere else, and that somewhere else can be anywhere. Moving to the next slide. The next we have symbolization of relationships. So as I said, this story is not typically on a love story between these two, but friendship is the center of this story. It's actually a pivot that allows both the character to develop layers, and then we get to see those layers of both the character. From the beginning of the story, we have this clear distinction that Dante is one from a very family, and Ari is the one from a relatively poor background, and both are supportive. Dante's family and Aristotle's family, but the uh, the scenarios in Aristotle's family are not as smooth as you would assume from Dante. So that's a clear distinction there. And the relationship that they have, which each of their parents are very different, and they symbolize a very different arc in both of their stories. Next, symbolization of terms plus coming to terms. So throughout this whole story, we have various terms that represent a lot of subtle details when it comes to gender equality, or queer nature of these two characters, or you can say certain things that we do not find in regular life, but these terms signify whenever we encounter them, that the story is going to revolve around queer nature and coming of age and a thorough redefinition of gender as we know it. And coming to terms is also a major part in this story when we go towards the end of it. And Aristotle and both come to terms with their own gender and the variation in that. A small spoiler would be Aristotle does not identify himself as we know of himself as a queer person. He is considered strict in his own mind, but since we go through this story, we find out that Aristotle and they both develop feelings for each other without their own knowledge. Even if we consider some of the events that they go through, like um, tending to birds or some of the other creatures that we have in the stories, like dogs, they have very subtle but very critical meaning when it comes to their relationship. And even the author is very supportive of this kind of meaning in this story. And I recommend that a lot of people read this story for what it is and for what it represents. I think that's about it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing this book with us. So let's see what we have in the chat. So one student says, let me just scroll up. Aristotle and Dante sounds great, but I could already feel that it would have some hate crimes with the synopsis. So I guess, would you say that, I mean, it's a whole story. Is there a big kind of dark part? I'm not sure what the hate crime relates to, if that's more to their queerness or maybe also related to their race. And is that like as a reader, is that a big dark part of the story, or does it get resolved as a reader? How am I at the end? Am I sad? Am I hopefully not so sad without spoilers? But what do you think if someone is maybe a bit hesitant about reading it because of the hate crime that also happens?
That's actually the most highlighted part in this particular story, that the hate crime is actually not the center of it. It comes as a twist, you would say, as a plot twist, that people find answers. People and readers find answers to a lot of questions that we have, and that hate crime that we have, it's a very small incident that is shown here, and it acts as a gate to all those answers. And the story does not end at that moment. The story goes forward to explain that incident, and it ends in a very very satisfying and heartbroken way. Like both did find themselves in a position where they are accepting a lot of things that they were denying throughout the story. And as a reader, that is actually very very to find out at the end of the story.
Okay, great. Yeah, definitely makes me want to check it out. So another student asks about the author. I'm not sure how much you know about the author, but if the author is maybe also Latine and queer or not, if you know anything about that.
Yeah, so it is a very interesting fact that the author Benjamin Elliot came out at the age of 54. That he throughout his life he worked as a poet and he considered himself to be a straight man, but at the age of 54 he came out to be a queer person, and after that his whole perspective of this the society have changed. And in this story as well, he wanted to address the fact that because he was now at the age of 54, he had kids which he couldn't have when which he biologically couldn't have when he come out. So he wanted to make this fact very clear that even parents of the kids can be supportive of the queer nature, especially in case of a very educational background, or it does not actually depend on the culture or the position of the person that he or she or they are.
Okay, that's very great. Thank you very much. Yeah, and one more student says, I didn't know about this book. It's great to have more POC representation in queer art. So yeah, definitely the intersection of queerness and other marginalized identities like race. It's great. Okay, I want to be mindful of the time, so let's move to Lauren's topic next. And I got some more questions for Jem. I'll get back to those at the end.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Again, my name is Lauren, and I'm going to kind of be doing a little bit more broad look at literature versus focusing on one book in particular, though I will be talking about two books in more detail closer to the end. So, just as with any aspect of literature, there's so many things you can talk about, especially in regards to the portrayal of queer people. And that can have to do with the visibility, what kind of tropes are used, who the characters are, what kind of story they go through. But in this presentation, I'm just interested in queer literature by queer authors, focusing on queer characters and what the LGBTQ community, at least in America, consider as our classics. So yeah, get into it. So again, there's a lot of different things you can focus on, and I like to dip my toes in the stories of those across the spectrum of sexuality and gender identity. But when it comes to, like, in this case, talking more deeply about them, I'm more interested in those stories about lesbians or sapphic stories, or WLW stories, women loving women stories. These three words more or less all mean the same thing, but you might see them just used a little bit differently. So sapphic is an adjective, so a sapphic love story usually refers to a love story between two women. Lesbian is probably the word you know more, that you've seen more frequently. And then WLW is kind of just the acronym that people will use when texting or typing about things that they're reading or in general. and also non-binary or gender non-conforming topic. As a non-binary, gender non-conforming person myself, I like to see myself represented, and I like to see the stories of others who have similar but also very different experiences than I do. So what are the classics? So a classic is a defining piece of art, and this can be in literature, it can be in architecture, it can be in movies, and all sorts of things. But it usually implies a sense of age. It has some timeliness to it. And so many LGBTQ plus books that are considered classics are really not that old. This has to do with social stigma and censorship. And so books or stories that may have or may have almost had explicitly queer characters and storylines, they just wouldn't get published. And if they did, the authors would often face persecution. So today, the books that are published about queer stories are often written about an older time, either the 1950s or the early 1900s, or even before that, but they're often historical fiction because it allows us the opportunity to be reflective on those eras while also not facing persecution for writing these stories as we would if we were in the 1940s publishing a book about gay love. And so the picture on the side of this slide is one of the oldest queer classics, at least in the lesbian community, which is Carmilla, which is actually a book that inspired Dracula, which you might know more well. But this book is not even 200 years old, so it's quite, in the whole scheme of things, it's not that old of a book. Now, a lot of queer stories focus on tragedy, especially these historical fiction genre books, because so much of queer history and culture is influenced by long-standing discrimination and prejudice. You often come across themes of isolation and loss, and they can be quite bleak, and they're not always easy reads. In general, classics, these kind of literary distinguishing works, are not always easy reads in kind of the mainstream classics in English, and I assume probably in Japanese as well, that they tend to have a more serious tone. They're not, some of them can be lighthearted, but in general, they kind of pull you down quite a bit, or they make you think, they make you have to process a lot of things going on. So common warnings that come along with these books that incorporate queer tragedy have to do with the standard homophobia and transphobia, but also racism, police brutality, which is very important in the American sphere, especially today, to talk about contemporary issues. But it also will come up if you read queer literature from European countries and everywhere else. Violence, sometimes explicit, and then suicide or suicidal ideation. And then the book on the side of this screen is a book actually by a Taiwanese author from not that long ago. And this book is very good, but it is quite difficult to get through, at least for me, because it kind of spoke to a lot of the issues that I've internalized or that I share. And so here's kind of a little glance at how the genre has evolved and how it's continued. So we have in the 20s, we have another really old book for the lesbians, The Well of Loneliness. This book is known for being very bleak, for being very sad. It has loneliness in the title, and that kind of keeps throughout the story. This is a book that I have not read yet because of that. Sometimes I don't really want to just be sad all the time. And in the middle, we have The Price of Salt, which is actually a coming-of-age novel, since the main character is only just at about 20. This book was published in the 50s. And then we have Tipping the Velvet, which was published in the late 90s. And this book is actually a little more lighthearted. It's not as deeply serious. It's not as deeply sad. But it's looking back at a time. It's able to have that reflective lens. So the author is not writing of like, right now, these are my feelings and this is everything I'm through on paper. It's kind of taking a step back and looking at another time. So now to go a little bit more into detail about story. So one very important book for the lesbian part of queer literature is a book called Stone Butch Blues, which was published in 1993 by Leslie Feinberg. So this book is set in the mid-1900s, so 1940s, 1950s, early 1960s. A large portion of the book takes place in Buffalo, New York, which is quite a small city compared to New York, New York. It's a very industrial city, or a blue-collar city. Blue-collar workers refer to workers who work in factories, in industry like cars, or might be the one that comes to mind first, or mills or anything like that. Any manual labor of that sort is considered blue collar. So our main character is a blue collar butch lesbian. So butch referring to kind of the way of presentation, looking more masc, to the point of sometimes being able to pass as a man in public. But of course, in reality, that's not necessarily the case. This book asks a lot of questions, such as what is butch? What is it to be a lesbian? Can you still identify with these terms if you decide to transition, if you decide to actively change your appearance, change your document so that they say a different sex or a different gender as assigned by birth? If I decide to fully transition to male, can I still call myself a lesbian when that's kind of known as, you know, a woman-loving woman term? Has a lot of revolutionary themes. It deals with, the main character deals with a lot. There's a lot of warnings in this book, such as sexual trauma and sexual assault, prejudice of all types, not just the homophobia and the transphobia, but also just sexism, racism. This is taking place in the mid-1900s America, where it's all these tensions are real, just coalescing upon each other. And also talks about the difficulties in maintaining community. So even though the titular character, Jess, finds community and finds, you know, other people to become friends with or start relationships with, there's different definitions of like what they want their community to be, and that causes some tension or causes the main character to break ties with some people. But in the end, it is also a book about finding love and peace and joy despite the hardships of their life. This book is a book that I could not read outside of my home because I was crying every chapter. This book really spoke to me as, again, as somebody who loves women and somebody who does not identify as cis, because the main character goes through a lot of questioning about whether they want to transition, and they even do to a point. They get a surgery, they start a new life in New York, and kind of present themselves in one way and worry about being found out. There's a lot of worry about being seen as a woman during that transition and then being like excommunicated by the friends that they've made, and so on, and eventually settles on this more non-binary feeling of identity and self. And yeah, so it's a very good read if you can, if you're prepared for it and you're ready to kind of open your mind and open your heart to the story that's being told. Now, interestingly, I'd like to compare this real quickly to a book that was published really recently called Last Night at the Telegraph Club. So this book was published 2 years ago, and it's also set in the mid-1900s, though on the other side of the United States in San Francisco, California. Now, this book is intended for young adults, so it's focused on the main characters are teenagers and is a coming-of-age novel. And the main character in this case is a Chinese-American lesbian who decides to kind of break their norms, to break some rules before they have to go off to college and continue to meet all of their expectations from their family and society. And just like I didn't mention it in Stone Butch Blues, but a lot of the book takes place in bars. Because the bars kind of end up being the place where community was allowed, whether that was bribing off the bar owners to have kind of a space to be safe, or if the bar owners themselves automatically just already made it a safe space. But at the same time, even though that is the place where community got built, it all became a place of danger because there could be police raids at any minute. If somebody gave a tip-off, then police would come in, they would break things up, they would arrest people, because there were a lot of like morality rules at this time in the US about like how you could dress, where you could be, and a lot of discriminatory laws and practices to people who were trying to simply find community with each other. So this book, even though it is much lighter, it still deals with racism, family expectations and anxieties, but it's a bit easier of a read than Stone Butch Blues because it's not questioning everything. It's not as revolutionary in themes. It may be too early to label as a classic, but it's really good. And most of the other people in my community also have largely good things to say about this book. So we might see this book become a classic, be considered a classic in the future. Yeah, and nowadays there are many books with queer themes by queer authors, and I hope you decide to check some out after this. That's really just really the point that I want to share with everybody. But yeah, that's it for my presentation.
Muted again. Thank you very much. Okay, wonderful. Let's check out the comments. So we got some thank you comments saying thank you and happy Pride, as well as I have so many more shows to watch and books to read now. Thank you. Agreed. I'm putting everything on my little list. And then one student said, Stone Butch Blues sounds a little heavy, but very educational. So yeah, I agree. I was wondering, you said the themes are very heavy, but in terms of the language, how difficult is Stone Butch Blues, but maybe also some of the other ones for someone who's not a native speaker?
Yeah, so for Stone Butch Blues is a very interesting case to me. It's one of the reasons that I like it so much. It's pretty straightforward. It has a narrative line that's relatively easy to follow, and then just here and there you'll be hit with something very poetic. Not necessarily complex. You can tell that the author was not intending to write like an intellectual novel for the sake of writing an intellectual novel. It's a very emotional book, but it's not, I wouldn't say that it's convoluted, at least from my perspective. For the other books, Notes of a Crocodile, the English translation of Notes of a Crocodile is very difficult. That's not a starter book. That book, the way that the narrative of it is a little confusing, a little all over the place, even for me. And then the Price of Salt, also known as Carol, is much easier because it also follows just a pretty straight through line. But the other books I can't speak on. And the Notes of it, I'm getting the titles confused. Last Night at the Telegraph Club Since it is written for young adults, it's focused for teenagers. That book is also a bit more of an easier read because of that.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah. And maybe we have some students joining from Taiwan, and they can read the original one of the crocodile one as well. So that would be great. Yeah, one thing you mentioned about a lot of books being set in the past at a time when maybe stories would not have been able to be published as contemporary stories. It also reminded me or brought up the question of maybe because when we talk about the past and real people, a lot of times we don't know much about them. And so we interpret them as straight unless we know that they were queer. So a lot of times we will say, oh, she lived with a friend for 10 years because there's no stated love confession. So I wonder if maybe these books tend to be written about the past as well because we want to see more queer stories in the past.
Yeah, I think it's definitely part of it. There is evidence, of course, in real life of, these people living a certain way. There's, there's photographs, things like that. Other thing I didn't hear about So Much Blues is that it's not semi-autobiographical. It's not explicitly about the author's life, but it is very heavily influenced from the author's personal experiences and struggles that they went through. But yeah, definitely wanting to, I think, put ourselves back into the narrative of the past, because we know we were there, we know we were doing things, but of course the books published during that time are not necessarily representative of that. So we want to kind of fix the narrative a little bit, correct it a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, so for the final part, let's go in reverse order. So let's start again with Lauren, and then Maynk, and then Jem, and you can all talk a little bit about what you do on Cafe Talk. So I think we have some slides prepared for that as well.
Okay. Yeah, so hello again, everybody. On Cafe Talk, I focus more on doing conversation lessons. Those are my most popular ones. But I also am really into figurative language, and I have an idioms lesson if you want to know more about making your English a little bit more interesting, having a little bit more turns of phrases and that sort of thing. But I also have a longer lesson available for choosing your own topic if there's something you want to know more about. So if you want to talk to me about literature of any type, not just queer literature, please, give my profile a look and maybe check me out.
Hi. On Cafe Talk, I mainly teach English, but I do have a variety of lessons, and one of which is actually a Hindi lesson. So I mainly teach English, and I sometimes deliver lessons on Hindi. But I do have one particular lesson that would be very intriguing for a lot of the readers, because I am a very big time reader. And just like Lauren and Jem mentioned, I am familiar with May Martin and the last night at the Telegraph Club. So maybe if you want to learn more books, learn about more books, or increase your reading ability while making yourself skilled and fluent in English conversation and general communication, you can check out my lessons. And that's about it. See you on the Cafe Talk platform.
Okay, hi everyone. So I teach mainly English conversation lessons. I also do proofreading work. I can check your diary writing, things like that as well. I also give grammar explanations. These are usually around an intermediate level. So if you're really having trouble with English grammar, I've got weak point lessons that will help you with that sort of thing. And I'm pretty friendly. You can talk to me about anything in my free talks. So please go ahead and book a lesson if you like. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, and let's just check out the chat again. もし最後にあと何か聞きたいことがありましたら、今が最後のチャンスなので、ぜひぜひチャットに書いてください。So everyone, if you still have some questions left, feel free to write them now. So I copied some that I got earlier into my little notepad here for gems. So a bit after your presentation, a student asked, could you tell us if people are more open to talk about LGBTQ matters with friends and family? Because even now in Japan, it's an awkward topic to talk about.
The UK is like maybe 100 times more open than Japan. That doesn't mean it's perfect. For example, people who come from a religious background, their religion may have some problems with their identity, and there are some troubles with, for example, transgender people getting the treatment they need, the therapy that they need. But in terms of, for example, if you're the LGBT part, most people are pretty accepting of that these days. You can marry someone of the same gender. So we're halfway there, I would say.
Okay, that's good to hear. And yeah, let's hope the other half gets better as well, especially in regards to trans people as well. Another one we got was, yeah, thank you for letting us know about the show. Do you think they speak difficult English in the show? And the person said they will try to find it on Netflix, so that's good.
Oh, that's great. It's difficult to explain. The thing I think that will be the most difficult is the pronunciation, because obviously most of the characters are native English speakers, so their words tend to join together when they're speaking. So, for example, whereas someone in Japan might be more familiar with something like hot tea, they'll speak more like hot tea. So I recommend adding the English subtitles, because that will help you understand a lot if you have trouble catching native pronunciation.
Yeah, especially since, like you said, some of the characters or actors speak different accents as well. So that can get a lot for the ears too, if you have to get used to different accents. Okay, let me check again if we have some follow-up ones. Yes, there's one more. How many languages have you tried to learn, or how many languages do you speak? So that's an open question to all of you. What about you? What languages do you speak, or would you like to learn? So yeah, maybe Maynk, do you want to? So you speak two, definitely. Oh no, you're muted.
Yeah, so I speak more than two languages, actually. India has a lot of languages, so I speak around 3 Indian languages, and then obviously English and basic beginners Japanese and beginners level Spanish as well. And I'm constantly trying to learn Japanese and more languages associated with Asian cultures. So yeah.
Wow, great. That's a lot. And good luck with your Japanese. I know it's a difficult one, but it's a fun one. So Lauren, how about you?
Okay, I'll go next. Yeah, so besides English, the first foreign language that I learned that I still feel pretty good at is German. And then I live in Taiwan actually right now, and so my Chinese kind of has to be my Mandarin Chinese kind of has to be up to par. My Japanese used to be a lot better, but I could probably still make it through a basic conversation with what I got.
Okay, great. Yeah, wow. So I hope maybe Japanese helped you with studying Chinese as well, or the other way around.
It makes it easy in some aspects and makes it more difficult in others.
Yeah, I get that. I tried to learn Korean, and that was the same experience. It's more difficult and more easy in some ways. Okay, so how about you, Jim?
I'm only really fluent in English, my native language. I can speak maybe intermediate level Japanese, so I can understand around JLPTN 3 level if you're familiar with that, but that's about my limit.
Yeah, but I mean, that's usually enough to kind of get around and order things, the N3 level,
Yeah.
so that's good.
As long as you don't go to the hospital or the tax office.
Yeah, okay, I understand. Those are difficult
Yeah.
at any point. Okay, so looking at the chat again, it looks like we don't have any other questions. So wait, let me just go back to my screen. I just want to quickly at the end talk about the other event we have coming up this month. 他に質問がないようなので、最後に、このプライドマンスキャンペーン、の次にある、イベントも紹介したいと思いますが、6月24日、朝10時、100% 日本語の、配信になりますが、アライとしてできることというテーマについて無料の、配信がありますので、もしご興味があればぜひそれもチェックしてください。そして、プライドマンスキャンペーンのページには、他にも LGBTQIA+ の、レッスンを提供している講師たちのレッスンがありますので、ぜひそれも見てみてください。あと、もし途中でご参加された方がいましたら、今日の配信は後でも、無料の、録画アーカイブとして見れますので、多分明日、明後日ぐらいに、ページに上がると思いますので、もう一度チェックしてください。So if you joined us throughout this event, you didn't watch the whole thing, but you want to watch it again, the recording should be up tomorrow or the day after. Just check back again on the campaign page, and then you should be able to see a link there. Okay, so yeah, that's it for the event. We went a little bit over time. Thank you all for staying so long, even though we talked a bit longer. It was really amazing. I have so many books and series to check out. So thank you all so much for your presentations, and have a great day, everyone. Goodbye.